is open to the press and public on request. This meeting will not be broadcast live. However, a recording will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings. I have had no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members attending via Microsoft Teams refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Before we start, we have several new members joined us today, so I'd just like to do some introductions around the table so that we can put names to faces, if that's okay. Starting with you gentlemen who are online, if you'd like to say who you are. Anyone?
So that goes me first because I'm the A. It's Councillor Stuart Ashley Pontnewid.
Thank you.
And sorry, I'm Chair of Cross-Cutting and Resources.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Alan Slade from the Lantern Ward.
Good morning, Councillor David Williams from Llanrafan Ward.
Thank you all.
Morning.
Sorry. Go on.
Sorry, did you want introductions to officers as well, Chair? Sorry.
Yeah, you can do.
Tom Roberts, Business and Democratic Services Support Manager.
Thank you. And round the table we have...
Bore da pawb, good morning. My name's Mark Rees and I'm a newly appointed lay independent member of the committee. Diolch.
Thank you, Mark.
Sarah Dickinson, Lead Finance Officer, Capital Programme.
Thank you.
David Lilly, Head of Financial Services.
Nick Byrne, Councillor Nick Byrne, New Inn Ward.
Councillor Peter Jones, Toolocks and Hentis Ward, Executive Member for Corporate Governance and Performance.
Peter Williams, Head of Audit and Procurement.
Delith Harris, Monitoring Officer and Assistant Chief Legal Officer. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Peggington, I'm a lay member on the Governance and Audits Committee.
Gary Thomas, Democratic Services.
Thank you all. We've obviously get to know each other as we're going through the meeting and we can put names to faces and we'll know each other quite well. To start the meeting, moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1 is the election of the Chair and the Deputy Chair. So I'm going to hand over to Delith Harris, who's the Monitoring Officer and Assistant Legal Officer. Thank you, Delith.
Thank you. If I can just set out what the legal requirements are. As a result of the local government and Elections Wales Act 2021, there have been changes with regard to the composition of the committee. So the chair has to be a lay member. So we've got 3 members who are lay members. We've got Michael Kelleher, Mark Rees and Catherine Peggington. And with regard to the deputy chair, the only restriction is that the deputy chair cannot be a member of the Labour group. So we've got 3 eligible members to be deputy, that could be nominated as a deputy chair, and we've got Councillor Alan Slade, who's an independent member, and also, well, subject to who's appointed as the lay members, you've got 3 lay members, Michael Kelleher, Mark Rees and Catherine Peggington. So if I can ask firstly then for a nomination for the chair, and as I've said, that the chair must be a lay member. Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Mrs Pennington, please.
And I'll second that.
Can I just make sure that everybody, all members agree to that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are there any votes against?
No, that's fine. It's just I didn't hear it very clearly. Sorry.
It's just to check, Councillor Williams, that you agree to Catherine Peggington being appointed as the chair of the Governance Audit Committee.
I do
yes,
as well.
So there's no votes against and just any abstentions? No. If I can pass you over then to the chair, Catherine Peggington, who can deal with the appointment of the vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your vote, and thank you for re-electing me again. I appreciate the confidence and the support that you all give me. With regard now to the election of the Deputy Chair, as Dallas has pointed out, there are 3 other people who are eligible, which is Councillor Slade, Mark Rees and Michael Kelleher, who were 2 new lay members. Mr Michael Kelleher has not attended at the moment. I don't know if he sent any apologies. So have we got any nominations for either Councillor Alan Slade or Mr Mark Rees as the Deputy Chair, please?
Hello, Chair, can I nominate Mr Kelleher, please?
You can.
I'll second that as well.
I'll second that. Okay. Have we got any votes for Michael Kelleher? Is there anybody against Michael Kelleher becoming Chair? I'll take that forward then. Okay, so Mr Michael Kelleher, in his absence, has been voted the Deputy Chair for the Audit and Governance Committee. Thank you. Right, moving on now to welcomes and apologies. Geraint, do we have any apologies, please?
No apologies, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, apologies from Nigel Aurelius.
From?
Nigel Aurelius.
Okay. Note that. Thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Geraint, please can you ask the members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
No problem, thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Stuart Ashley.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nick Byrne.
None that I'm aware of.
Councillor Jones.
None.
Michael Keller's not here. Yourself, Chair?
None.
Mr Rees.
No interest to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Slade.
None that I'm aware of.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Williams.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. That's everyone, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, can I just give some advice to members? I appreciate at the start of the meeting that members haven't got any interest to declare, but if you ask a specific question or into a debate about a specific matter, then you may consider whether you have an interest at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think we all understand that. So moving on now to agenda item 4, which is the minutes of the Governance and Audit Committee from our last meeting, the 9th of March 2022. These are on page 3 through to 12. Members, can you state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the members? If not, we will take them all as agreed. Any matters to raise? Okay, we'll take those as agreed. Agenda item 5 is the action sheet. And we'll find this on page... Sorry. Page 13. Please can you state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the action sheet? If not, we'll take its contents as agreed. I think we can all confirm that we have had the information sent to us following our last meeting. Okay, we'll take those as agreed if there's nobody saying anything different. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, which is the annual governance statement. I'm going to pass over to Dana, the Monitoring Officer and Assistant Chief Legal Officer. Please can you present your report for us?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present to the Governance and Audit Committee the draft annual governance statement for 2021-2022 for scrutiny and comments. The purpose of the statement is to outline the governance processes and arrangements that have been operating within the authority for the year 2021-22. The statement is shown in the appendix, and it has been prepared by officers in the Corporate Governance and Risk Management Group. And assurance has been sought from officers who are responsible for areas of governance contained in the statement that the arrangements are in place and working. The completed statement will be signed by the leader and the chief executive of the council alongside the annual statement of accounts, which are to be presented to council for approval. I don't propose members to go through the whole of the statement. It's there before you, and it's been prepared in accordance with the guidance produced in 2016 by SIPFA and Solace, and the 7 principles are set out on the first page. It's just to draw your attention to paragraph 1.4, which has been updated, and it shows the impact of the pandemic on the governance arrangements. As I've said, all the rest of it is based upon the statement that has been produced to you in previous years and has been updated by officers. The review of effectiveness of the governance framework demonstrates the arrangements in place during the year were effective, and the overall opinion of the internal audit continues to be that the system of internal control remains sound with scope for improvement. So the recommendation is that the committee scrutinises and makes comments on the annual governance statement. Thank you, Chair.
Has anyone got any comments to make with regard to this report, please? I just had one query on page 27, 10.8, Stella. Sorry, I won't do the slides. To assist the Council's drive for performance improvement in its school. I know this is a hot topic at the moment. The implication is that this committee hasn't sat for a while, is due to reconvene. Who is this? Who does it?
Or is that the
feedback to the
Chair? Is that the School Standards Monitoring Subcommittee?
Yes.
Right. I don't know whether I know Tom Roberts is on the line with regard to that. I don't know whether Tom can provide an update for members. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Chair. Essentially, the scrutiny committee, the parent scrutiny committee, is really looking at the terms of reference for that group. So the group will meet again, and will meet again very shortly. But I think it's going to be work in a very in a different way, in a kind of a much more workshop type approach. We'll be looking at how we're going about addressing the findings that have been made in the Estin report that has come out quite recently, and hopefully work in a much more proactive way in looking at improving education services across the council. You know, there's obviously a hard-hitting report that's come into the council quite recently, and the chair of the committee is keen to do all that she can to support the council to improve our education services.
Thank you. It says within that paragraph that although the subcommittee has not met for some time, do we know how long it hasn't met for? Could this be one of the reasons why we have problems?
I'd have to come back with you an exact date for how long it hasn't met for. When the committee was set up, it was set up to look at school performance and to look at the data for each school. Now, after some time of meeting, Welsh Government changed how essentially changed the availability of school-based data. A lot of the data that the committee used to rely on in order to do its job was no longer available to it, and therefore it kind of stalled after a while, and it needed to kind of refresh what it did and what information it could use and how it could best operate. So that's why it stopped meeting, was because of a lack of data based on attainment. So that, you know, in a nutshell, that's why it stopped.
Okay, thank you. think it's quite reassuring to think that it's going to restart up again, and hopefully soon, as opposed to later. Thanks very much. Are there any other comments with regard to contents of this report?
Yeah, I've just put my hand up.
Sorry, Councillor Ashley, yes, you have.
Yeah. It's actually for the future. We've just changed our name to the Governance Committee, and I think this report's sound. But you used the word, Tom used the word data. It's and it's a question I asked to Peter Williams, I think, last meeting about report. When are we getting the as from this report that the data is all through it? I'm wondering what the report's frequencies are about data that compiles to the next version of this. I'm intrigued because obviously we got the governance side into the audit now as well, which is the thing I probably we're going to major on. I know some people are nodding. Are we having a frequency of reports to add up to the next one? Because the data side of what we're doing now is as important as the finance side. Just ask that simple little question. I know it's not simple.
Can anyone give us an answer, please?
I'm not clear what the question is, but I mean, in terms of the annual governance statement, we would report to this committee once a year in respect of the actual statement, and obviously various officers would look at if they've got data in respect of it, would look at it in terms of how relevant that was in terms of compiling the annual governance statement. Now, I'm not sure whether that was what your question was about, Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of what we do scrutinising things, both in this committee and the other one, are obviously getting a picture of what's happening. And the governance is, you know, and the fact we got a sound governance thing. I mean, it is actually being able to see, getting a picture of seeing what's happening. And obviously, data. Education being an example, and some of the others as well, just getting a feel of what's happening throughout the year. And this report is quite good, actually. I mean, it gives us a good picture, but obviously I like to know what's going on, as it were, and I think myself and other members of this committee have a feel. We get a feel with a finance report. We need an idea of what the feel is on governance and data and the picture you guys are normally very good at telling us. So we need to know what frequency we can, what we can build up to this. Now we've got this brief. Does that make sense?
I think we can just note your comments, but as I've said,
I know, yeah.
Yeah, the governance statement is presented, I think, once a year, really. Yes.
No, it's how you snapshot this throughout the year, and you know whether it's functioning soundly or not, and what your triggers are when things don't go the way you particularly want them to. I've sat around in councils long enough to know most things work well, but occasionally they don't. So it's useful to know what the warning signs are.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I won't belabour the point, but I think it is something we take seriously.
Sorry. Peter, I think you may be able to help. Sorry.
It's two Peters. Thanks, Chair. Basically, I think the annual governance statement, like the answer, is an annual statement. But I'd like to think if things arise during the year that are significant, they get reported. Like, for example, and that could be from a number of sources. It could be something that I would identify as part of my internal audit work, or it could be something that the governance and risk management group identify as part of the work they do. And I think if something of significance arises during the year on a governance, it will be elevated to the appropriate place at that point in time, whether that be cabinet or audit committee or whatever. So anyway, I think it is monitored during the year. As for data, I'm at a bit of a loss on that one because the council produces so much data. You know what I mean? It's in terms of what data would you be looking for or what data do you particularly want. I think there is a new performance management structure going on where data is reported on like a 12 week cycle, and I don't know if anything rising out of those could be fed in if there are things of a concern at that time.
Yeah, Chair, if I may come back, we have seen that, and we kind of need officers' help maybe in interpreting some of that. Yes, that is quite elaborate. No, okay, I didn't mean to confuse everything. This is a good report, and it's very illustrative. Sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Yeah.
Councillor Williams, you had your hand up next.
Yes, thank you. And I guess it's really sort of building on from something that Councillor Ashley said. Obviously, the annual report is a statement of what's happened and an overview of the year. And it's right that we receive that and get the overall view. But I think the point that Councillor Ashley was making was actually about, well, you know, are there kind of early warning signs that occasionally we perhaps need to be brought to this committee, whether that's from scrutiny process or whether that's from external reviews or whether that's from the internal audit programme. Obviously fairly new to this, so I'm not quite sure how the interaction works between scrutiny and this committee, but I think I'm just trying to condense the point that I think is being made.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peter-Jones, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick point, just picking up on what the two other councillors said. I mean, the role of the scrutiny committees of deal during the year with very hot topics, and they'd have the opportunity, if they felt the need, to refer things to this committee. So I think there are procedures in place that could ensure that topics that are causing concern around performance and governance could be brought back to this committee via the scrutiny committees. And Stuart, your committee in particular, which looks at governance, would be able to deal with that.
Thank you for Chair, if I may. Thank you for illustrating that. That is the point I was probably making there. It's instinct on my part rather than sometimes logic, but and that's the feel I have for it. I rather head it off at the pass rather than let it fester, as it were.
Thanks. It's reassuring to know that everything will get sorted eventually, I hope.
Thank you, Chair.
I think our position is to keep an eye on these things as we're doing with all these reports. Thank you. Right, the recommendations for this report, if there are no other queries or questions, are on page 16 of the agenda. Please can you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise, I'll take them as agreed. Right, I see nobody's hands up with regards to an abstention. So we'll take it as agreed. Thank you. Moving on now to agenda item 7, which is the Audit Wales 2022 audit plan. Hand over to who's going to take this report.
Myself, Chair, Julie Rees.
Okay, thank you. If you can take over.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. And for those of you I've not met before, my name's Julie Rees. I'm the Audit Manager for the financial audit of the accounts this year. And we've got my colleague Bethan Roberts on the line as well, who leads on the performance work. Item 7 you've got in your packs today is our audit plan. It's a joint audit plan setting out the work that the financial audit is going to do, cover, and similarly the performance audit work that we're going to undertake for this year. It also sets out the cost of the audit, the timetabling and the team who are going to do the work. The plan's been shared with management prior to coming to you today as well. And I'm just briefly going to pick up on a couple of elements on the financial audit work plan, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Bethan, who will just pick up on the performance side. Excuse me. So in terms of the audit of the financial statements this year, so in paras 8 and 9, that sets out the scope of the work we're going to be doing. So alongside auditing the draft 21-22 accounts and the audit governance statement, etc. with that, we'll also be doing some work on the whole of government accounts return. If that meets the threshold set, we'll be responding to questions and objections from any electors that come in. We also audit the Greater Gwent pension fund. That has a separate annual audit plan, and that gets reported to the pension committee. We'll also be undertaking the audit of the Gwent Archives Joint Committee. Again, there's a separate committee for that. And we'll be undertaking a number of grant claim audits as planned. What I'd like to do very briefly, obviously I appreciate you've taken time to read the report. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of the risks that we've identified for the audit this year. Exhibit 1 sets out all of the risks that we've identified, 5 of which we've classified as significant. And just to give you some perspective on that, all of those tend to be risks that you'll see in all of the local government plans for this year. Management override is the standard risk you'll see in your plan and every other's year on year. I briefly just wanted to pick up on the asset valuation risk, if I may. The Council has adopted a 5-year rolling programme to keep your asset valuations up to date. Coming out of COVID, there's been significant increases in building costs, particularly in 21-22, and there's an increased risk this year perceived that the current value might be materially different to the carrying value of assets in the balance sheet. We're currently finalising some guidance on this, and we're looking to work with the Council to take this forward. But I just wanted to point this one out in particular because it might have a knock-on to the timetable as to when we're finalising, because it's very much a live issue that we're working through at the moment. In terms of other risks, I just briefly wanted to touch on the Cardiff Capital Regional City deal is in as a risk, and that is a specific Torfaen risk. It's basically the figures are consolidated into the accounts. And that is a complex area. We did have quite a significant adjustment following last year's audit as well, so it is an area we'll be focusing on for this year's audit. And similarly, journals and authorisation controls. The Council has an arrangement whereby certain journals under a threshold aren't routinely reviewed, so we just do a little additional work to get the assurance we need that there's no control weaknesses there from our point of view in terms of the audit. Before I hand over to my colleague Bethan, I just to draw your attention further down into the report, the fees are set out in Exhibit 3, and the audit team is the same as last year, so we have continuity across the board on both sides there. And like I mentioned, the timetable should be broadly similar, apart from that July 2022 conclusion of the audit of financial statements is likely to move back at this stage, but that's one we're very much keeping in discussions with officers on as to when that will change to. So I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Bethan, who will pick up on the performance work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you'll have seen in Exhibit 2 of the report, it sets out the performance audit work for 22-23. In that table, it summarises the work that will be ongoing. But I'd like to draw your attention to the thematic review, which is in the table as to be confirmed. So when we issued this, that was the case, but it's going to be on a digital theme. The scoping of that work is still to be completed, so I can't give you any details on what that piece of work is going to look like, but I can tell you it's on the digital theme. And then the bespoke local project as well will be working with the council, so it's likely to be on waste management, but again, we need to scope that and be in further discussions with the council. The other items on that exhibit are common in other local authorities as well, such as the assurance and risk assessment and the unscheduled care thematic review as well. So, as Julie referred to, the timetable, a similar picture for performance work as well. The individual projects will be discussed with the council, to get the best timing for those specific piece of work, and they'll be set out in project briefs. But we will inform the committee of when those work are taking place, and that will be updated in the quarterly updates for future meetings as well. So, in addition, I don't have anything additional to that on the performance work. So, welcome to take any questions.
Has anybody got any questions with regards to these reports? Okay, over to you.
Thanks. You mentioned, Julie, that in the timetable that the date of July had been set, but that's likely to be pushed back for a number of reasons. Is there any estimate as to when that report might that timetable date might come to us?
Thank you. The asset valuation is very much a live issue, and we're just finalising some guidance on that now to share with the management team as to how we can take that forward. I think initial thoughts are hopefully September, but we'll be in a position we need to basically discuss with management as to how realistic it'll be to take that forward and get any amendments required to the draft accounts ready for us then to subsequently audit. So indicatively it was September, unless management would like to add anything further.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Julie. I confirm that we're working towards September. We're waiting for the guidance as Julie outlined, and we'll be in a position then to produce the revised accounts that we've submitted to audit, and we will be in a position for September. We've penciled in a special audit committee for the 7th of September for you to consider the statement of accounts and the audit report prior to it being considered to Council on the 20th of September.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, your hand is raised.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just getting back to, thanks very much, Bethan, for the overview of the audit and thematic reviews, etc. I guess the first question was really, obviously, with unscheduled care, a lot of this sits within the Health Board. So it's really just getting a view as to whether you'll be able to go into the hospital end as well as, if you like, the start of the flow process as well as the impact within the community.
Thank you. So, as part of the performance team, there's a health team as well. So, it's not just performance of local governments, it's also the health side as well. So the project will be developed with that team, and we will be looking at the local authority side of that process, if you like. Exact details of how that work will look like I can't share with you at the moment until I have further information myself. But yeah, they're working through those sorts of issues just to be able to make sure that there's value added in doing the piece of work as well. So yes, there's a health team as part of Audit Wales as well that audits the Health Board. So they'll have insight into that side of it. But they will be working and developing the project together.
But thank you very much for that. That gives us some reassurance. So thank you for that. And the second point was obviously perhaps the forward look is that obviously this council on a regional basis, along with others, will be getting sort of levelling up related funding. So I would imagine that this must be something for perhaps a further thematic review, perhaps too early this year, but I guess it's something that needs to be on our radar going forward.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, it's definitely something to consider, and the Auditor General consults on the work programme each year. So whatever's been you see in front of you in the audit plan this year will have been consulted on around March time. And we invite comments and suggestions on our thematic work, and so that would be an opportunity to bring those sort of topics up. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Ashley, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I'm rather hesitant to ask that you're looking at study into recycling with the volatility of all that field at the moment. We're in it, but obviously markets and the things that are going on a greater level. What would be your scope on that?
To be honest with you, we're in that stage now. We'll be working towards scoping it. So again, I haven't got the details of that. We need to be looking and discussing with the officers where best to focus the audit on, and obviously gather additional information so that we sort of scope the project properly. So we will share that with the committee in the next one. I expect we'll have had that discussions with the council.
I'm likely to be sitting on the scrutiny. I suspect scrutiny will be looking at that as well. Would you be tying in with scrutiny on that?
I expect so. But again, it's still very early days, and we need to confirm that we are doing a piece of work with the council, and have those further discussions.
Sounds a very interesting one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got something I'd like to raise. On Exhibit 2, the thematic review of unscheduled care, who gets the information and when with regard to that?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
That's okay. On Exhibit 2, on page 42 of our agenda, on the thematic review of unscheduled care, it says we undertake a cross-sector review focused on the flow of patients. I just wondered who gets this information, or where does the information come from for you?
As in who gets the information in Audit Wales?
Where is it fed back to into a line? Is this a general all Wales thing, or is it specific?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this is a thematic piece of work that's going to be undertaken at all local authorities. So we will be fed back in the same way as we would with other projects as well. So you will receive a report on this.
In the nearest future?
Chair.
Pardon?
So, in the near future, or when
it's during the audit year this year, so we expect it to be undertaken in the first half of this year, but again timetables need to be firmed up, and then we'll be able to share that with you, but probably then the report will be in the committee towards the second half of the year, I would expect. But again, I'll confirm that with you during the quarterly updates that we'll be bringing to the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Tom Roberts, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, it was just to say that all reports that are produced by all performance reports produced by Audit Wales, they come in through me into the council, and then I can make sure that they are brought to the attention of the right officers and brought in through this this committee as well, as per the protocol.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments to make with regard to this report? Okay, thank you. This item is for noting only, so we will note that we have discussed it. Thank you. That takes us on to agenda item 9, which is the update of external regulatory reports. Tom Roberts, Business Democratic Support Services Manager. Please could you present your report? Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon. Agenda item 8 is still Audit Wales, the quarterly update programme. I'm handing back to you. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you very much, Chair. So the quarterly update, as the name says, will be produced each quarter. The one that you've seen in the reports pack is the position up to the 31st of March. So some parts of it, some time has passed since then. But it's been taken to the next available Governance and Audit Committee. So in the next week or so, we'll be working on the latest quarter, and that will be brought to you in the next Governance and Audit Committee. So it's basically a way of updating the progress on the work that you've just seen in the plan in the last item. It sets out the position of the financial audit work, performance audit work, but it also has then updates from Estin and CIW as well. And towards the end of the report, you will have already seen there's links to our website on reports that we have issued during the year. And if there's any upcoming GPX, which is Good Practice Exchange team that we've got, any events that they've got on, those will be included in that report as well. So specifically on performance audit work, you'll see there's not only the local pieces of work, but also the local government and national studies planned work as well. So yes, as I said, this will be coming to you each quarter to update you on the position of the audit programme. I'm welcome to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions with regard to this report? No, I don't see anybody's hand has been raised. So this report is for noting only, so we'll take that we have noted it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your input. Right, now we can move on to agenda item 9, update on external regulatory reports. Tom Roberts, Business and Democratic Support Services Manager, please could you present your report?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Sorry I can't be with you in the chamber today. I've got a bit of COVID, so best stay away. The report sets out details of any new external audit work received by the council, so it's clearly linked to the two reports that Bethan has brought before you in the last two items. Torfaen Council has a protocol for dealing with new external audit reports, which has been agreed by this committee. In brief, that requires all new reports to be received by the Governance and Audit Committee, referred to the relevant scrutiny committee and added to the council's single governance and improvement action plan. This is monitored by this committee every 6 months, so the next time will be in October. The report isn't to undertake a scrutiny of the recommendations, rather it's to assure itself that the recommendations being received are being properly considered and actioned. That said, if there are any questions about the specifics of each report, I will either try and answer or more likely get the information you need outside of this meeting. As you can see, there has been 3 new reports received by the council since the last update in March. So there's a report on the direct payments for adult social care. This is a national report. The report looked at how direct payments help sustain people's well-being and whether they're improving quality of life. It also looked at how local authorities manage and encourage take-up of direct payments and whether these services present value for money. The report made 10 formal recommendations. The report sits within the portfolio of the Council's Healthy Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The report and its findings will therefore be referred to this committee for future monitoring. The service area has begun drafting an action plan in response to this review, and that is set out in draft in Appendix 1. The second report is a shared resource service follow-up review, which is an Audit Wales review across the SRS region. The report made no formal recommendations or proposals for improvement. Overall, SRS partners considered that the collaboration has delivered effectively during the pandemic and to be well placed for the future. It would benefit from improved communication, more effective sharing of digital aspiration and learning, addressing its workforce challenges, and being able to demonstrate value for money. Audit Wales reached this conclusion. Excuse me, sorry. Just as by way of a verbal update, the report was due to be discussed by the Strategic Board in April, but that was postponed, and the report will be discussed at the July 19th board. Finally, there's an education report from Estin. This is a Torfaen-specific report on local authority education services. The report makes 4 formal recommendations. Most members will be aware that this report and its findings were discussed in an extraordinary meeting of full council on the 14th of June 2022. The report sits within the portfolio of the Council's Education Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As agreed by full council, its findings will therefore be referred to this committee for future monitoring of the required post-inspection action plan. Further updates will also be received by full council. And just to go back to what I was saying earlier about the subcommittee, so I should have said, and I've just been made aware that there was a discussion by the Education Overview and Scrutiny Committee informally last Wednesday, and a further meeting today to discuss setting up that subcommittee. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for attending despite not feeling overly well. We appreciate it. Have we got any questions for Tom Roberts with regard to this report, please? No one has their hands raised. I do, however, have a question which is probably easily resolved. On page 37, which is the table of the recommendations, of the start of the 10 recommendations, there are no progress dates populated on any of it. Is that because it hasn't actually been discussed anywhere yet?
Yeah, it's in very draft format at the moment. I just wanted to, just to keep you up to date that things are being considered. Nothing's being left hanging. So it's not been agreed, but it is being actively considered.
appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes. Councillor Williams, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just to say thank you to Tom for explaining the connections between sort of the reports coming in, going to scrutiny and everything else. So that's very helpful and, if you like, in part answers my query from the earlier question.
Yes, it's quite reassuring. Thank you. Anybody else got any questions for Tom? The recommendations for this report then are on page 66 of the agenda. Please can you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise I will take them as agreed. Everyone's nodding and I can see nobody's hands up. So we'll take them as agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom. I hope you soon feel better.
Thank you.
That takes us on to agenda item 10, which is the Treasury Management Activities for 2021-22. Do we have David Lilly? There we go. Sorry, I was looking for you up there. I beg your pardon. Please, can you present your report for us?
Okay. Thanks very much, Stu. Good morning, members. This report, just as a way of background. Every year, Council has to set an annual Treasury Management Strategy, which explains how the Council will manage its cash flows and long-term borrowings. And the Governance and Audit Committee is integral to that strategy being adopted by Council. It scrutinises the draft policy, the draft strategy, usually in its January committee meeting, before it's considered by Council in Council's March meeting. The report you have tabled in front of you today is the outturn report for last financial year, 21-22. And just as a matter of interest, you also receive a mid-term report on these activities as well, which will come later in the year. So you'll have a mid-term for 22-23 as well. So turning to the report that you have published, I'll quickly run through that. Paragraph 4.1 outlines our borrowing activities for the year, together with the year-end position. So it shows a small reduction in our debt position to £122 million, and that reduction has arisen because of just normal routine repayments as agreed within the payment schedules that we had when we took out those loans. No new borrowing was undertaken and action during 21-22. Paragraph 4.2 then outlines our investment activity. So all of the activity that we undertook during the year, which was a fair amount, remained within the agreed criteria that operates within the strategy. And within the strategy, we tend to use a policy called where we look to secure the principal that we invest. So we make sure that we know that we're going to get our money back. We don't speculate with any principal investments. We then look at the liquidity of those investments. So how quickly can we get our investments back? So if we pick up anything that things are starting to go awry with people we invested with, we can get it back quickly to protect the public purse. And then lastly, we look at the yield of those investments. So what return can we make on our investments? So paragraph 4.2.4 summarises the activity during the year and the year-end position. So you can see that it's increased dramatically, our year-end position and our in-year position. So those enhanced investment levels really arose because of the additional extra funding that we achieved during the year from Welsh Government and other public bodies. The element of capital slippage that occurred during the year, and also the general underspend on our revenue budget. During the year, our general operations is that we invest in periods up to 3 months. so that we know that we can get money back quickly. Although this year we did take out 2 6-month investments, which were both actioned in February of this year. And they were we invested £5 million in Cornwall County Council at a rate of 1.02% and £5 million in Blackburn and Darwin at 0.85%. So, summarising the investment activity, you know, we've had a lot of money in, we've put a lot of money out, but because of the historic interest rates that have been prevalent during 21-22, which are now increasing, the return that we made, the yield that we made on those investments was particularly low again, I think just over £40,000. So, but we retained all our principal. Paragraph 4.3 then outlines the prudential code indicators, and that confirms that all the indicators that we set were achieved, with the exception of one, and that was the one in relation to the ratio of net revenue stream. So paragraph 4.3.7. And this ratio was really impacted by our favourable outturn position from last year, where we spent less, so the denominator in that ratio was lower, but our relatively static cost of financing our debt stayed fairly static. So obviously the position was slightly higher, so it was 0.1% over where we thought it was going to be when we set our strategy. Paragraph 4.4 then outlines the capital programme in a summary position. This is included in the report because of the impact that it has on the long-term borrowing position of the council. So capital programme, we saw £18.2 million spent on our approved programme, with a slippage through of 4.3 into 22-23. Chair, that's all I was going to say on the report, except could I pass on my apologies to the committee. In the recommendations, there is a couple of incorrect paragraph references. With paragraph 6.1, item 2, it should refer to paragraph 4.2, not paragraph 5, and paragraph 6.1.3 should have referred to 4.3, not paragraph 6. So apologies for that. And I'm open to any questions on the report.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Right, we have a question.
Yeah, thank you for the report, David. Just one little point on 4.1 borrowing. There's a sentence that says, due to interest rates remaining at such low levels, it's highly unlikely that these variable market loans will be called for a change in rates. I mean, we're seeing the base rate now going up, and the predictions are it's going to go up any more. Is it really highly unlikely at this stage?
Yes, Councillor. It is still highly unlikely. The rates we are running on these low-bow loans range from 4.75% to 11%, I think it is. So they've got to hit there before they're going to look to. At the moment, the banks and institutions are in a beneficial situation. So just as a matter of interest, we are actually currently negotiating with one of the lenders to actually repay 2 of these debt, to actually remove them from our debt position. So we are hopeful that they will be concluded by the end of July. But yeah, the rates raised from 4.7 up to 8.1%. So they've got to go a long way yet.
Touching wood. Thank you. Thanks for the answer. Councillor Ashley? Sorry, you've got a question? Your hand is raised.
I might have to declare on this because the works I'm going to mention are actually happening in my ward, which is unusual. We've got capital works happening in my ward, one of them an unadopted road and the other the Blind Brown Wood. I know for a fact that certain of these works, I won't mention them, maybe I can get around that, have noticeably and publicly attracted extra costs because of the unusual situation of the materials in them going up. How have you managed to get round that problem, which is a similar problem to what you just mentioned in capital works?
Can you answer that question, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. We manage the capital programme through project manager, accountable officer relationships. So we discuss projects regularly with those individuals. We are witnessing increased cost pressures on the capital programme and on the revenue programme as well. The one scheme that you mentioned, well, you referred to, you didn't mention it by name, but I can.
We didn't do that.
So Blind Brown Brook, yeah, there were cost pressures on that scheme, which required a redesign and a discussion with Welsh Government, which Welsh Government then provided additional funding for, which meant the scheme was delayed. That's why it slipped into 22-23. With regards to cost pressures on others, you know, the service areas responsible are doing their best to manage the delivery within the cost envelopes that we got, but it is a pressure that we are seeing, well, across the UK.
Can I ask supplementary on this, Chair? Are we having to build, because of this, are we having to build into future projects and other things like this a kind of estimated guess as to what might happen, or are you taking it as it goes? I don't know how you would do that even.
We're definitely not taking it as it goes. You know,
yeah.
We are obviously schemes that are up and running and are in contract are being managed between the project manager and the contractor. And discussions continue with those. With regards to schemes that are coming towards approval or going through the tender process, we are seeing pressures which are being discussed with contractors to see if we can mitigate. We are looking to see whether we can value engineering the contracts down to bring it more in line. But all projects that we do commission do have a contingency element within them. So at the moment, we are working within those contingencies.
I mean, it does. I mean, obviously, from a domestic point of view, we've all got energy bills, and it does make what you wonder what the council's doing on said subject, because it's horrendous, obviously for everybody at the moment. But council's energy bill must be amazing, and the high cap.
Yeah. Obviously, Councillor Ashley, the energy situation doesn't impact on the capital programme.
No.
That's a revenue cost. So, but yes, we are witnessing pressures on our energy budget, even though we purchased a lot of our energy in advance. So we are anticipating that there will be a larger spike going into 23-24 than we experienced in 22-23.
Does that feature in your would it feature in the construction projects?
No, not energy projects.
No. I get materials. Don't worry. It just struck me looking at it. No, thank you for that. I just hope that it goes back the other way when we sort of get the same world. But at the moment, everything's going through the roof, isn't it?
That's two of us.
Yeah. Thank you there.
I think that's the majority of us somehow.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that discussion. Can I just make a comment? It's not even a question. On 4.1.3, the ability that you have to forecast so far in advance for variable loads. I just think it's amazing. I know I won't be here in 2076, but it's such a long forecast ahead, I can't even get my head around it. Thank you.
So thank you, Chair. 4.1.3, that's a pictorial representation of our current borrowing.
Yeah.
So that's where they will drop out. So when we do take out borrowing in the future, because we will do, we will look at that profile and we'll try to put the borrowing into the gaps that we've got. So we try to flatten out the profile of our borrowing so that future public servants won't be left with huge spikes going forward. So Thank you very much.
I just admire the fact that you can even think about that far ahead. So, well done you. Thanks. Right, has anybody else got any questions or queries? Yes, I think Councillor Slade had his hand up first, then I'll come back to you. Is that okay, Councillor Byrne? Councillor Slade?
Thank you, Chair. My question really builds upon what Councillor Ashley raised, which is about the slippage in the capital programme. And obviously, if there is slippage and projects are getting carried into further years, we've all acknowledged that there will be extra costs. Shouldn't this really be a subject for audit, just to see whether there are problems in the delivery of these projects? Because we've seen some of the delays. There are two in my ward that have been delayed years, and obviously now there's questions about whether they're affordable or not, and that's simply because they weren't sort of undertaken in a timely manner.
The slippage on the programme that we have in front of us, we have discussed that with the senior leadership team of the council, and we have enhanced the monitoring arrangements that we have with them, and that will also form part now of the project management office that is being created to have oversight of large change projects and capital projects. So we recognise that there are issues with delivery of the programme, but some of it is outside of the council's control. Some of it is inside the council's control. So the enhanced monitoring that is now being undertaken by the senior leadership team, and when the PMO is set up, we're hopeful that will address the issues that we've seen this year and in the previous years regarding slippage. So whether it's a matter for audit committee is obviously a matter for you to discuss, but it may be beneficial if audit committee waits to see the output of or the changes that the enhanced monitoring and PMO brings to the process of project management in the council, to not duplicate the work, or obviously if you want to bring it into audit committee, you can do.
Can I just follow that up briefly? Will members be given sight of these sort of new arrangements, and perhaps what the reviewers of the review's conclusions, should we say?
I'd have to, on the members seeing the processes, I'll have to defer that one to Tom. Because that is through an officer programme. I'll have to take advice as a Tom on that one.
Tom, can you step in and answer?
Yeah, not in a full way. I think it'd be a great idea if members had a seminar on the new arrangements, and I can take that one back to Jason Lewis, who's setting it up at the moment. But what exactly is the question, Councillor Slade? Is it just understanding of what the arrangements are, or is it future monitoring?
Well, the question goes, I mean, we've had capital projects planned, and I'll give you an example, the solar farm, for instance. Works didn't start as sort of promised, and now those works, the cost of those works have escalated, and there's obviously going to be a cost to the council involved here, and I'm just wondering, what we're doing to sort of improve our sort of planning, because it's all very well, giving us a timetable of these projects, but when that timetable slips, there will ultimately be a cost, an increased cost. and there will be questions of whether that project will, in fact, go ahead at all.
Yeah, I know that the Chief Executive is incredibly keen that we, through the development of the next corporate plan, that we really are absolutely 100% clear on what it is we're going to be delivering year on year, and then that is reported into members, regularly, and and you can then draw assurances or make recommendations where you think issues are arising. But the council is setting out exactly what it's going to be doing. And you can see when that is happening or when that isn't happening. So I can give you assurances there that we will be reporting more frequently into members going forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Byrne, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to know who we're borrowing from. Like it says here, obviously banks, money market funds, but do you actually have like names of them? Are we allowed to see that, or are we not allowed to see that?
We specify who we borrow from. We generally borrow from banks. So a couple of banks I got in front of me now are Phoenix Bank, Bayer Landers Bank, Commerce Bank, Barclays Bank. So it's a spread. We are less fussy on who we borrow from. We're obviously very fussy of who we lend to. We have very tight criteria on that. But with borrowing, we look at where we can get the best rate from, because the money's coming to us. I can share with you where the borrowings are if you want to, but it's spread over a lot of institutions. It's not homed in on certain ones. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks for that.
Thank you. I noticed that Beth and Roberts, you got your hand up. Would you like to come in with us?
Thank you. Just to respond to Councillor Slade's question, you'll notice in the audit plan that as part of our assurance and risk assessments, there will be a sort of a theme, if you like, a high-level theme on capital programme management as well as part of that ongoing review throughout the year. So they'll be on different topics, but the ones that are likely to have that focus on will be capital programme management as well. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethan. Has anybody else got any questions or queries before we move? So,
thanks, Chair. It's sort of connected to the previous question about investments. I fully appreciate that there are strict rules about being prudent with our money and where it has to be invested. But when I was doing a bit of background, in applying for the lay member position in the first place, and could see that the council as a whole has agreed and declared a climate emergency. So, do you look specifically to invest in make investment opportunities in greener industries, opportunities? Do you make those kind of judgments?
No. Basically, our investments are, as I said earlier, on a shorter term scale. So we only invest generally up into 3 months. Twice in the last year we've done it over 6 months. So there is not a lot of opportunity to invest in the longer term for us, whilst giving us certainty that we will get the principal back. With regards to the longer term investments, the pension fund is, for example, that takes a much longer viewpoint of its investment portfolio, whereas we look on a much shorter term basis. So, and it's mainly because of the security of the public investment.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, we have another question.
Just picking up on the point you made, in the previous council term, I served on the pension committee, and they're constantly looking at a responsible investment strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Right, if there are no other questions, I think we've had quite a good discussion on this one. It's been really good, thank you. Members' recommendations are on page 78 of the agenda. Please can you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise, I'll take them all as agreed. I see no abstentions or anything else, so I'll take these as being agreed. Thank you, everyone. Moving on now to agenda item 11, which is the internal audit annual report for 2021-22. Mr. Peter Williams, Head of Internal Audit and Procurement, could you present your report for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to give a bit of a background for new members on the committee, the usual process is we have an audit plan which we agree at the beginning of the year, which we agreed last March for the current year, obviously similar for the year before. During the year then I will produce quarterly reports of the work we've done during the year on the plan. I bring to the attention of the committee any significant issues which could be, when we make recommendations and report, we grade them as high, medium or low. Obviously high the ones of greater significance. I bring those to your attention as part of my quarterly updates or any other issues that I think are relevant from a governance perspective, so that hopefully that gives you some assurance on some of the questions earlier about a bit of an early warning system in terms of the work we undertaken on some of the systems and being able to bring things to your attention quickly. So I usually report on it's not quite quarterly, but it's roughly quarterly basis throughout the year, progress against the plan. And this report today now is obviously the culmination of the 4 quarters, and I must provide an annual report to Audit Governance and Audit Committee and provide an opinion on our system of internal control, which is what hopefully this report outlines for you. In terms of an opinion, on paragraph 4.1 of page 80, I judge that there are 3 types of opinions I can give. One is sound, one is reliable, and one is unreliable. And I give them the definitions within the body of the report. Based on the work we've done in the year, we've done something like 80 pieces of work in the year. We look at the major core systems every year on an annual basis, and we look at the other systems or other areas of governance on a rolling basis, usually once every 3 years or once every 2 years, depending on the sort of judgment of risk. For a number of years, my opinion has been, based on the work we've carried out in the year, that we have a sound system of internal control and there are no significant issues. Obviously, being an auditor, we're naturally pessimistic. We're not optimistic people. Therefore, the opinion is tainted with a bit of, it's sound with scope for improvement. And the reason why I say there's scope for improvement, obviously, is when we made recommendations, there are no high recommendations we identified during the course of the year. There are a number of medium and low recommendations which we'd like management to address. And for all the work we do, we usually produce a report, an output report, and there's an agreed action plan with the appropriate head of service or chief officer and agreed dates in terms of what we will do, what the agreed actions are. If the action is not agreed, I got an escalation process where I can bring it to either the chief officer or audit committee. I've had none of those instances in the year I'm currently reporting in. Paragraph 4.3 outlines that refers to the appendix. There's 2 appendixes to the report. The first appendix is the main core financial system, the big areas of spending in the council, things like credit payments, payroll, general ledger, cashier and income, housing benefits, the major revenue systems. And the second appendix is a summary of all the work we've done in the year, not just the core opinion. That summary shows the work we've done, the recommendations we made, and the opinions of each piece of work. So it's my judgment then, sort of putting all that together to come up with the opinion, and based on looking at the results of the work and the opinions, I come up with a sound system operating in the council for the 2021-22 financial year. The report, page 61, paragraph 5.1, obviously mentions non-core financial systems. While we do a lot of financial audits, we also look at other areas as well, such as records management, etc., and other areas of governance during the year. Paragraph 3.3 brings to your attention that there were 2 audits in the year where we identified a limited opinion. When I give an opinion, it's either limited, moderate, substantial or full, based on the controls in place. So, for example, if more than 70% of the controls are in place that we test, we deem that system to be substantially in place. 90% and above, we go for full. Less than 50% we deem as limited and that actions needed to be undertaken. 2 of the audits in the year came up with a limited opinion. One was on works in default within environmental health, and the other one was on records management approach. Both those have got agreed action plans in place, and we will undertake follow-up audits during the year to make sure the progress is implemented as agreed on those. The records management one is a bit different because there's a big records management project, and the sort of end date for that project is something like, I think it's March 2024. So it won't be fully implemented in the next year, but we probably do an audit in about 12 months' time to make sure the progress is being made adequate on the agreed recommendations. The works in default one, that'll probably happen in about 6 to 7 months' time, which is our usual timescale for doing follow-ups following the full audit. The rest of the paragraphs, obviously, we do a number of school audits at the individual schools, which are usually a combination of payroll audits, credit payments audits, income collection, etc., at those individual schools. And paragraph 7 identifies the sort of non-governance type audits we do in terms of document management, business continuity, health and safety. We looked at electoral registration and information security policy during the year. Paragraph 8.1 talks about external accreditation. I think I mentioned this last time, or mentioned it in the recent training I provided to the members, in that every 5 years, internal audit has to undergo an external assessment by an independent body. The last one we had was in 2018, and we passed that assessment. There's now one due for 2023, and I'm in the early stages of setting that up at the moment. I use an independent body called SWAP, which is a Southwest Audit Partnership, and they'll probably come and do that review early 2023 as feedback to Audit Committee. Hopefully we'll be in a positive position. I got to carry out a self-assessment against a set of criteria, and then I provide that information to them. They'll do the assessment and feedback accordingly. Paragraph 9 talks about performance. Obviously, the same as everybody else, we're subject to performance indicators and targets. Pleased to report that we've achieved the targets we set for the year in terms of completion of the audit plan, which is the whole plan. We estimated we would achieve 75% plan, and we did it. The other 25% rolls forward into this year. As I explained before, we always got that because that gives me flexibility in terms of being able to move audits around or change audits or accommodate other audits that may be requested. In terms of project efficiency, that's for each audit, we set a time scale, and we do an audit within 10 days or 12 days. We monitor that, so I know we got the right resources. We try to deliver audits in a timely fashion, so we want to send out a draft report to the customer or the client within 3 weeks of completing the work, and we're achieving that target at the moment. And most of the recommendations, like 100% of the recommendations we made in the year were accepted by clients. So I think that's indicative of the relationship between audit and the clients we got. We're not seen as all audit coming along looking, they want to criticise. It's very much a partnership approach where we're looking to improve the controls, looking to improve the systems, and I think that relationship has developed over a number of years, and it's quite a positive one. We haven't got this sort of poor relationship with any of the services, and I think that fits into the way we report and the timely way we report. In terms of the recommendations of the report, I recommend that you note the content of the report and seek any clarification, any points raised or queries on some of the issues, and I'll try my best to answer them, or if not, get back to you with answers in due course. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter. Has anybody got any questions with regard to this report, please?
Thanks for the report there. Just a little bit of clarification. We've seen earlier Audit Wales and what their work is, and they tell us how much it's going to cost us for them to do that work. You mentioned this external body swap coming in to just double check that you're doing everything okay. Do you have to tender for them to do that work, or is there are we allowed to know how much you pay them?
I'm hoping I don't have to tender. And that's probably a surprise answer from the head of audit, isn't it, to be honest? Because below £5,000 we can accept one quotation. When they did it in 2018, it was about £2,500. So I'm proceeding on 5 years of inflation. Costs haven't gone mad in the financial world, even if they have in the construction world. I'm hoping it's going to be around about the £4,500 mark, and I'll be able to appoint them on that basis. If not, I'll have to seek quotations from other people.
That sounds okay to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or queries? Okay, thank you, Peter. Recommendations are on page 84 of the agenda. Please can you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise, we'll take them as agreed. I see no hands raised, so we'll take them as agreed. Thank you. I'll take us on to item agenda 12, which is the 2022-23 Internal Audit Plan. Back to Peter Williams, Head of Internal Audit. Please could you present the report for us?
Thank you, Chair. It's literally 20-second report. At the March Audit Committee, I presented the draft audit plan. At the time, there was still some ongoing consultation with some of the service areas. There's a delay on my part in getting the draft plan out. And the plan was agreed at that stage, subject to any changes. I'm glad to report that I've had no further feedback from the service areas. So the plan which was agreed by the Audit Committee in March 2022 is the plan we're working to for the current year. So it's just a ratification of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody got any queries or questions with regards to that for Peter? Okay, the recommendations are on page 90 of the agenda. Please could you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise, we'll take them as agreed. I think everybody's agreed, so we'll take that as agreed. Agenda item 13 is the Audit Committee work programme. Yes, please, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This is basically a skeleton of the things we expect to come to Audit Committee, and we'll mark them off as they're done, so we know we got the appropriate business done throughout the year. Obviously, it's subject to change with other things that are coming in. In terms of change on this one, obviously you'll note from the programme there was potentially a special meeting due in July to deal with the statement of accounts, and potentially a special meeting in September to deal with the new self-assessment process. The statement of accounts, as we've already outlined, won't be ready for the July Audit Committee, so we're hoping to merge the two and have a special item in September, and the plan is to have that on Wednesday, September the 7th. And hopefully that'll be a two-item agenda with dealing with the statement of accounts and the self-assessment process.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any queries or questions with that one? This report is for information only. As Peter stated, there will probably be an extra meeting on Wednesday, September the 7th with regard to going through that information. Can I just say, during the course of this meeting, I've been made aware that Mr. Michael Keller has been trying to join us on Teams, but has fortunately failed. So he said next meeting he hopes to come and visit us in person. So benefits of technology don't always work, but it's nice to know that he has tried. That will be the third Labour person who will be sitting on this committee, and it will be nice to meet him. So with regards to the meeting in September, the next full meeting then is on 19th of October 2022. Thank you everyone for your attendance. Thank you for your contributions. And I'll now close the meeting.
Thank you, Chair, for chairing.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Chair.
Thank you. Bye.